Mr. Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I find it interesting that we're holding this hearing today on the impact of foreign-held U.S. national debt. On the same day on the front page of the Washington Post, there is a third part of a four-part series talking about how behind the scenes it was Vice President Cheney who was the architect of the Bush economic policies that led to the largest deficits in American history. One of my hopes that today's hearing will debunk Mr. Cheney's flat-out wrong statement or declaration that deficits don't matter. I think while we disagree on the origin of the deficits, I would hope there'd be bipartisan agreement that deficits do matter, that Vice President Cheney, the architect of the Bush economic policy, was dead wrong in his declaration. Mr. Ryan talked a little bit, Dr. Orzog, about the basis of the deficits. He made a statement, I wrote it down, tax relief isn't the reason for deficit. Let me ask you a question. Based on your analysis for fiscal year 2007, what percent of this year's deficit is the result of tax cuts passed since 2001, approximately?
I'd have to give you the exact number later, and it depends how you do the accounting, but the revenue effect of the 2001 and 2003 tax legislation is roughly 1.5% of GDP, which is about the size of the federal deficit today. So
put that in lay terms. Had we not had the tax cuts passed since 2001, according to CBO analysis, the deficit would be how much smaller?
If you just do a simple accounting exercise that takes that estimated revenue effect from the Joint Committee on Taxation and compare it to today's deficit, it would roughly eliminate the deficit. But I'd have to get back to the exact
gentlemen, you
the gentleman's had a lot of time. In round two, I'd be glad. I think it'd be healthy to have a discussion on this, but the gentleman's had quite a bit of time. I'd like to take mine. Mr. Ryan also said entitlements are the biggest problem, and I agree with him on that. I would like to point out the fact for the record, and let me put this in terms of a question. Since Medicare was created in 1965, has there been any single increase in expenditures for the Medicare program larger than that passed in the Republican Congress on Medicare Part D? Has any other increase in the history of Medicare been larger in its increase in expenditures than that passed in the wee hours of the morning with a lot of arm twisting by the Republican majority in the House and the Congress? Or is that the largest increase in Medicare entitlement spending in the history of that program?
I believe, I would have to check with regard to ESRD, but I believe that the Part D expansion in terms of the long-term fiscal impact was the largest since 1965.
And I think that is a fact. I think Mr. Cooper, my colleague, says the total liability of that long-term is $8 trillion. So those who decry entitlement spending were actually the authors as a party, as a majority in the Congress, the largest increase in the Medicare entitlement program in the history of that program, even as we talk about how it's health care expenditures that are going to be a threat to future deficits. Let me ask also, in terms of the foreign-held debt, in light of our difference with Mr. Cheney that deficits don't matter, I know that the debt has increased, foreign-held debt's increased dramatically since the Bush administration has taken over, I think over $1.4 trillion or so. China holds 23% of that foreign-held debt. Japan holds 17%. What are some of the other 3 or 4 other countries that hold significant U.S. debt?
There are European countries, the UK in particular. I would note that some of the allocations by country can be
I understand.
Difficult to allocate.
Venezuela hold any U.S. debt?
I'm sure it holds some, yes.
Okay. Let me ask you, what would be we have about 50 seconds remaining, what would be the economic impact on our economy if China announced today that it was going to cash in a substantial amount, or let's go the full way. If China announced today they were going to cash in all of their U.S. debt holdings, what would be the economic impact on the American economy?
Well, again, without commenting on the probability of that happening, the result would depend in part on the response of other financial participants, but that's the kind of thing that those worried about the risk of a sudden adjustment with severe economic dislocations that would concern them.
Okay, severe economic dislocations. That's similar to devastating to the American economy? under
Again-
most likely scenarios?
Again, I think it's difficult to play out all of the ways should they do so.
Thank you.